Hey, folks, that's right. We're back again with another new episode of Unfinished Business. I am Jeff Gallashaw, your gracious host. And with me, as always, is my co host, Andre Joseph.
Hello, everyone. Andre Joseph, Apex Productions.
And this week, there's not as much movie news. So I thought of posing a film philosophical question, and then we're going to get into two reviews of one new movie and one that's a little slightly older, but kind of ties into the first movie we're going to review. So my question for you, Andre, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you plan on having kids someday?
Yeah, in the near future.
Okay, now my question. Are you going to teach them the way of the Marvel movies?
No, I mean, they would certainly be exposed to it, but I would try to make sure, like, they would see the films that I grew up on. And, as they get older, maybe show them, like, the more heavier stuff. I wouldn't show them RoboCop as a kid. I would wait till much later. Put it that way.
How about the Star Wars, I guess, saga at this point?
Star Wars, I would probably have them on the original trilogy. I would talk about the prequels. Anything after that, it all depends. I mean, Mandalorian, I could go expose them to, but it really depends on where they go with it. I don't know so much about the trilogy.
Okay, because my question for you and for those out there, if they want to answer in the comments or write to us, when it comes to Star Wars and the Marvel series of films, are you going to show them to your children? Obviously, eventually, but when you show it to them, are you going to try and show it in the order like for the Marvel movies, from obviously the beginning, Iron Man, all the way through as each chapter leads to the next movie and each phase? Or are you going to feel free to maybe jump around a little just to explain how this leads to this, and how we're in this phase, and then this move, and then go back to phase one, like we're in phase 3, Doctor Strange, then all of a sudden we're back to phase 1, Iron Man. So not only that, with that, are you going to do the same thing with Star Wars, or are you going to be wild and try to do it like prequels first, because obviously they're more made for kids, even though there's a lot of political talk, and then the original trilogy, and then the more, by right now, the more recent trilogy. And for Star Wars, it's a little more tricky, because then are you going to like tie in the Solo spinoff movies? Are you going to include the Mandalorian in this? Are you going to go in the timeline order, or maybe the way you saw them and were introduced to them with the original trilogy, which is 4, 5, and 6, then go back to 1, 2, and 3. Then, hey, we're at 7, 8, 9, but then you'd have to start with the Mandalorian, because that's young Yoda, and so it's like, how are you going to show it to your kids? Maybe this is more of a question for the diehards out there, rather than normal film folk, because they're like, whatever, I'll just show whatever I feel like showing them. But it's just something I always wonder, especially for these people who like go on these rooms and are like, burn the negative of the new movies, only keep the Force Awakens, So I just wonder like how they're going to take it, or are they just going to show the original trilogy and be like, the others are bullshit, Yeah. But again, for you to get to the good.
I was
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I mean, I probably would be the type of father that would just let them get into it naturally on their own. Because for me, I mean, so many of the movies that I got into were either because they were movies that my parents rented, or it was just something that just was on HBO or Cinemax. And I got so into it, then I wanted to go out and rent the tape or something along those lines, and then figure it out on my own if it's in order or not in order. But if I was exposing a kid to, like, say, Marvel, I would try to keep it in order, because of how the stories get kind of like interweaved into the next one. Star Wars, it's trickier, only because if you start with the original trilogy and you go back, the narrative is obviously a lot weirder. It's like you already know everything that happens, but at the same time, start with the prequels where everything was done in the 90s, 2000s, the technology is more like close to what we have now, and go back to a movie that's archaic, then it feels kind of awkward. Like things kind of slow down, they might lose interest. So it's one of those things you kind of naturally feel out.
Okay. See, I guess it just occurred to me, like, while I was trying to come up with this question, because it's just something like, it's easier now because you have the newer stuff coming out in such at a rapid pace. But I know they plan with the Star Wars, of course. We're not just keep it going till the end of time. But it's like a little harder to, like, when you're older, like, let's say 10 years from now, to then be like, hey, where am I going to start my kids off on Star Wars if I'm going to introduce them to Star Wars? Like, should I let them watch, I don't know, whatever series Star Wars series is on by then? Or should I take them all the way back to how I saw it and experienced it so they can get the highs and lows just as I did? Or should I just let them discover? If they want to cheat, go for it. But then they come to me and ask so many questions, and it's like, oh, young Padawan, you've come to the right teacher. And that is, of course, if you're really into those movies or series. So that was really the only movie news that has happened this week. So I just was like, hey, let's go with a cinematic philosophical question. Viewers, feel free to write in your comments or what you think you're going to do. Please, we need the mail. So this leads us into, interestingly enough, a new movie on Hulu called Boss Level, which is an action film, kind of fantasy a little, because it involves a character who's living through a Groundhog's Day situation where he's repeating the day over and over, and they all have different outcomes. And if it all ends with him dying eventually, but then the day keeps repeating. It stars Frank Grillo, surprisingly Naomi Watts, Michelle Yeoh, and as the villain, Mel Gibson. Dun, dun, dun. So I will say what I thought of the movie first, if you don't mind. And you were the one who suggested it. I thought it was fun. It's like a lot better than a lot of recent action films that have been seen. Because I do enjoy Joe Carnahan as a director, usually. I also, Frank Grillo's an interesting action hero, I'm still getting used to him a little. I mean, I've seen a bunch of films with him, but, I guess he doesn't have a character type exactly yet, so he could be anything in a movie. The only thing that they all have in common is that he's very chiseled, I liked this film. I think, as always, it probably would be better to watch on a bigger screen than whatever size television you have, even though it's kind of compartmentalized, the action, which, obviously is happening more and more, especially when it comes to straight to streaming movies, which, I understand you have to work inside a certain perimeter. My problem with the movie, it's not the only problem, but my major problem with the movie is, again, you have all these superstars in the movie, and half of them are giving nothing to really do. They represent something, for the movie, like Naomi Watts, obviously kind of the damsel in distress and the person who starts all this. Michelle Yeoh, her role is integral to the plot. Hell, even Will Sasso as the henchman, is integral. But then we finally get to Mel Gibson, and he seems bored. He doesn't really add anything but name credit to it. I'm going to create a new term. He Bruce Willis's it. It seemed like his scenes were shot in 2 days. He didn't have that much enthusiasm going in. He was just happy to be working. And he pretty much earns his paycheck and is like, okay, I'm out. Is that all you need? Cool. But yet he still gets top billing. Because he's like, maybe in 10, 15 minutes of the whole movie? So that was like glaring to me when I'm watching the movie. And to me, action films their reputation is built on how the villain is. Like, is he going to be memorable? And since this wasn't really a memorable villain, it was kind of weak to me. And also my other problem is, I guess I'm used to movies where you're going to have like something like the end of the world threatened, and it should feel a little more epic than it does. It feels too small for that threat, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the one thing I thought was really inventive that other movies sometimes but don't usually do, I like that we see lessons learned on certain days and that we're told, oh, on day 56, this is how I learned this, which then helps them on a later day. Because let's face it, this movie, as with the title, is pretty much like a video game. So, other than that, that is pretty like my overall comments on the movie. If we're gonna give it a rating out of 5 stars, I'd give it 3.25.
Yeah.
And what did you?
I'm with you. I had fun with it. I liked I always liked the premises in movies like Groundhog Day and Edge of Tomorrow of constantly repeating the same day, and then something a little different goes on, but the outcome is always the same until there's like a big revelation. So that said, I think that was one thing I liked about it. I like Joe Carnahan as a filmmaker. There's 2 different types of Joe Carnahan movies. There's like the more straightforward dramatic thriller stuff like Narc and The Gray, and then there's like over the top stuff like Smoking Aces and The A-Team. So this is pretty much to the latter, and I think Frank Grillo gives one of his better performances as an actor, because most of the time I always feel like he has a look, but he's always so kind of like rigid and stiff and kind of like just straight to the facts. At least here he has a little bit more personality, and he kind of shows a little bit more engagement as a character that you're trying to root for. So I like that. I agree with you about Mel Gibson. Any Bruce Willis or Jeff Fahey could have played the part, would have made no difference. And I think some of the cameos they probably could have done without. Did they really need Rob Gronkowski? I like seeing him getting stabbed in the head. I didn't know Rampage Jackson was in the movie. Like, he's totally unrecognizable as one of the killers. There's some stuff that just was unnecessary. But, if I had to say, okay, overall, I like the movie just for entertainment value, check your brain in the door, and just enjoy the ride. I don't think it's as good as Edge of Tomorrow, though. And I say this because Edge of Tomorrow was just a much more clever movie. It's funny without trying intentionally to be funny. Whereas here, they're trying to hammer you over the head with the humor and, this dramatic build-up to him trying to get to Gibson. And then the movie's not even done by the time he gets to the point where you think he learns everything. So it kind of like says, you probably could have shortened this movie just a little bit. I don't think you needed another 10 minutes padded. But otherwise, I thought a 3-star film. Like, compared to a lot of stuff I've seen in the last year, this was enjoyable.
Well, I will say in its favor, like you said, it could have been 10 minutes shorter. But I like that it still follows the 3-act structure, because it feels like the first act, we're watching one type of movie. Then we're given new information, so it becomes sort of a different type of mission in Act 2. And then again, in Act 3, another new mission. So I enjoy that it constantly keeps reinventing itself. And I wholeheartedly agree with your comments about Joe Carnahan. He's one of those directors who I feel, not through his own fault, that there are so many films that he could have made that were like big budget that he, like, even hearing him talk about it, they sound so original. Even his Death Wish remake sounded like kick ass. And he's a director I wish would be given more chances, because he always delivers the goods. Because, the movies might not be perfect, but they're always entertaining. The action elements are always on point. And, if you follow him on social media, he says what's really on his mind, and I applaud him for that.
I've been on those live chats, and I mean, he just engages with everybody. That's the thing I like about him. There's no bullshit about Joe Carnahan as a person, and it's just like, even something like, say, the A-Team. I know the A-Team's not a good movie, but I'm a fan of the TV show, and the thing that I will say that I liked about it was he paid fan service throughout the first half of the film. Then he decided, I'm going to twist it all up and make it into my thing. And I think he did a pretty good job on that front. Yes, there's issues. I think they could have had a stronger villain in that film. But otherwise, I thought it was well cast. I thought it felt like a TV show at many points. And, I don't think it gets enough credit for what he tried to do there. And I think so many of his other projects, like he was supposed to do White Jazz with George Clooney. He was going to do Bad Boys for Life at one point, Mission Impossible 3. And it seems like he has a vision, but it's always clashing with the stars that he's working with, Florida Studios that are involved. And so it's like they don't want that kind of originality. They want to play it safe in the sandbox. And that's a shame, because I think he definitely should be a much bigger level director right now than, just putting something out on Hulu like Boss Level.
Exactly. And that was even though, again, I like Boss Level, it's just, I just wish, it was like he was doing bigger projects. Yeah. But he's doing well with what he has and in the work he can. So, I'm not going to put him down for, this movie. It's not a step below his usual work or anything. Right. So it's a constant, good stream. So I would definitely recommend Boss Level, especially if you're an action junkie or you're looking for a good action film that, during still quarantine times. So would you also recommend it to like friends or fans?
Yeah, no, I would totally recommend it. If you love action, if you love science fiction, it's enjoyable just to pass the time. It's a good movie.
Agreed. So now we move on to our next film, which is a little older. I just recently saw it recently. I wanted to see it when it came out, but, it was on different streaming services. And no offense, was on the fence about whether or not to pay for it. Luckily, it came out on Shudder recently, and I watched it. It's called VFW, standing for Veterans of Foreign Wars. And it's a siege movie at heart, basically, but it's set in the near future, where, a bunch of guys who are veterans of foreign wars, they meet at this bar, and, it's across the street from this gang's, I guess, playpen, hideout, whatever you want to call it. And the leader of this gang causes one of the junkies to kill herself. And out of revenge, her sister decides to steal the drugs that he was going to make a big drug deal with. And she ends up running into the bar and with the goons chasing her, and they decide to defend her and end up killing one of the guys who is the gang leader's brother. So, of course, now they want the bag and they want everybody in the bar dead. But they didn't know who they were fucking with. So it's basically a siege movie. It's an action movie. It's a thriller. I will let you take the lead on this one. Tell me, what did you think of VFW?
It felt a lot like The Expendables meets Assault on Precinct 13. I mean, it definitely takes like all these old school badasses. Most of them played like 80s bad guys, except for Fred Williamson. So that's one thing I like, was just taking all those guys, even David Patrick Kelly of all people, and making them these veterans, and just making them kick the asses of people 30 years younger than them. That's one enjoyable aspect of the movie. And having sort of that horror movie element to it that feels like it's a John Carpenter film with the gang trying to infiltrate the bar. I thought that was something that was unique and different, and certainly as a horror movie, it's very fucking violent. And there's not. I just like the cast. I like that they got Fred Williamson, and Martin Kove seems to be on a comeback these days. You got William Sadler playing sort of like, I think, the more sympathetic of all the guys. Or actually, no, Stephen Lang is more sympathetic, and he's the main star of this thing. It's brutal. It has a lot of teeth. I think it's even a little bit better than some of the Expendable sequels in that sense. And that I don't remember the name of the director, but he certainly has a vision.
Yes, Joe Begos.
Yeah, Joe Begos.
Well, what I like about this film, is okay. I'm not gonna lie to anybody. You've seen this type of movie before, so don't go in looking for like, oh, this is so different from movies I've seen. But what I really liked about the movie, other than the cast, that's what pulled me in the first place was the cast. But what I like about this movie is it is so obviously a film indebted to its influences, because you're like, this reminds me of this movie, this reminds me of that movie. Not bad movies, like it reminded me of Judgment Night with Emilio Estevez. Obviously John Carpenter movies, because I mean the synth score alone, and the kind of futuristic and everybody's wearing leather, the bad guys with the spikes on the vest. Even though it's very dark, huh?
Dirty Dozen.
Yep, go ahead. Another movie, and even though it's bleakly dark, strangely it's fun. You obviously, and I think there's characterization, but I think also having actors you recognize, even though they usually play villains, watching some of them perish makes it feel a little more personal, their deaths. Because I've seen another one of Joe Begos's films, and it seems like, spoiler alert, George Wendt's always in the movie for like 5 minutes and then has a horrible death scene. And so I don't know what's going on there. That's his version of South Park Kenny. And so, but the thing I just found a little ridiculous was that instead of zombies or vampires, the villains are, the people who are disposable are these junkies, who really just want that fix. But yet the movie wasn't to feel sympathetic towards one junkie who committed suicide in the beginning of the movie. But, all the rest are disposable. So I was like, huh? I also did not understand Fred Williamson's scene where he goes on basically a suicide mission, but why did he have to do the drugs? It was just like, okay. That was just a weird scene. Let's see, what do I have in my notes? I mean, we're hitting all the points. The violence. At first it's shocking, but then after a while there's so much of it, it almost becomes funny with the overkill. It's like, well, that guy's cranium certainly got smashed, or ooh, look, that one has teeth. It's just like, okay, we get it. But I like that everybody throughout the film, even though they know kind of they're like at their last whisper, they all seem to have kind of not only a code, but a sense of humor about it all. Like
especially Fred Williamson.
Exactly. It's just like, oh man. And, it sends kind of a little mixed message that the survivors are kind of not old. It's like, they get to live. It's just, I mean, I wanted that one guy to live because, he just came there for a drink. But it's also inventive use of, like, really, most of the film takes place in a single location. And I will admit, I wish there was more of the henchwoman on the evil guy side. I wish there was more of her in the film because I thought she was an interesting character, like the Baroness in G.I. Joe cartoons.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, it's exactly what you expect. It's a nice rental to watch. You want to watch something action-oriented, a little bit old school, but a little bit modern. And, hopefully it leads you to even more films of its type or the films that obviously influenced it. So I would definitely say, check it out. And I would definitely say, keep your eye on Joe Begos to see what he does next. Cause,
I want to see his next movie, whatever it is.
Yeah, because these films are interesting. This one maybe just a tiny bit derivative, but at least he knows what he's doing with the derivative. It doesn't feel soulless like a studio movie that would try the same formula. But obviously, he couldn't get away with the violence in a studio film like that with all this. I'm trying to see anything else I have to say about the movie. No, that's pretty much it. Short and to the point and sweet. Yeah,
I got nothing else to say about it. Maybe Marl Odom should have been in it.
Yes. It would have been interesting if like the Expendables, it would have just had all these like, hey, that guy was the villain in this film. Hey, I want that guy from No Holds Barred who played the main businessman villain in a movie like this.
Oh man, that would be great.
Like, I feel like they were like, well, we're waiting to see if Martin Kove says yes, but if not, you definitely got that role. And then Martin Kove was like, hey, Cobra Kai freed up, baby. So then it was like, that guy just, damn you, and I'll come up with my own Expendables, like that all-female action star movie one with Brigitte Nielsen. And
oh man, what a disappointment.
Yes, I was gonna say don't watch it. Don't watch it if you've not seen it. So, well, that is the business for this week. But as you know, we always have unfinished business. So, Andre Joseph, where can we see you, and what do you have to plug?
Well, as always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at AJEPYX. You can check out the updates about my upcoming films and even films that are coming up online at ajepixproductions.com. And by the way, my movies are being taken off of Amazon on DVD, so if you want to watch them for streaming, go to Vimeo on demand.
Okay, you said it all in one breath. I am Jeff Gallashaw. You can catch me on Instagram at ProjectorJ1, or you can catch me at Unfinished B2. I'm also Jeff Gallashaw on Facebook. Hold on, let me have a refreshing drink of Red Bull to keep my energy up. Product placement, we need sponsorship. With that, I do have to ask, have you seen McCabe and Mrs. Miller? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. What movie is fucking awesome? Andre Joseph, this week.
Have you seen the movie Cohen and Tate? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
Yes, even with Republican Adam Baldwin in it. But that is our business for this week. We will see you next time because, we always have unfinished business.